I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
We are talking about Disney's latest animated feature, Strange World, which kind of came and went in theaters with no fanfare at all. I'm just going to rip this Band-Aid off right now. The advertising for this movie sucked because all the advertising of this movie was, look at all of these strange creatures, look how beautiful the backgrounds look, and there's probably a story involving a father and son, but look how cool this movie looks. And of course, that's not going to get butts in seats.
I'm going to tell you even worse. We talked about the trailer initially when we saw it, and we were both rather excited. I even compared it to a video game I liked. And we were both curious about what it was going to be. We both said at the time that we were interested in seeing it. The marketing for this movie was so bad, I did not even realize it had come out until after it had been out for several days.
And it kind of got buried because this came out like a week after Black Panther Wakanda Forever did?
This came out on Thanksgiving. This was the Thanksgiving weekend, which is generally a big weekend for films.
Especially Disney.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big family movie weekend.
But I think, we've talked about Disney doing these kind of things before. Many people have compared this movie to Treasure Planet and Atlantis, which also was, not greatly promoted and got buried under the competition. And I think it's just Strange World got buried under the competition. It's just this time, instead of it being like Harry Potter or something, it was Disney themselves. Because again, people were still riding the high of Wakanda Forever. I don't
even know if that's it. Because, I mean, yeah, the Black Panther is a big thing to go up against. But this movie is not fighting for the same audience. So there are always going to be people who would want to go see this movie, either that had already seen Black Panther, and we're looking for something else, or, families with younger children that they're not going to sit through a film as long as Wakanda Forever, or they're not willing or able to take the heavier themes of something like Wakanda Forever. And they just want something shorter and bright and funny, and it's got a cute dog in it, and so this movie was never in direct competition, really. So to say like, oh, it got overshadowed by Disney's other big movie, I think is a cop-out. There is some idea that perhaps Chapek kind of buried this one.
And yeah, this was right around the time of the changeover when Chapek was going out the door and Iger was coming back.
The marketing campaigns are set far enough in advance that I'm not sure that it was like a last minute, like, oh, they just fired me, bury that movie. kind of thing. I think it was slightly more planned than that, if that's what happened.
I mean, Chapek's comments towards animation was all, just a few months before this movie came out. Chapek said some rather not so favorable comments towards animation.
Which is bizarre for a guy who was in charge of a company built on animation.
So, and not to mention, it was Chapek's calls to have like the Pixar movies skip theaters entirely and go straight to Disney Plus. And the same day release schedule of release it on Disney Plus the same days in theaters. And so it could just be a situation, and if you follow what happened the previous year with Encanto, where Encanto was in theaters, no one was really talking about it, and then it hit Disney Plus, and then it blew up.
And honestly, it's slightly disingenuous to call this one a total bomb, because yes, if you're just counting brick and mortar box office, yes, that is correct. It did not do well in the theatrical release because nobody knew it was there. I mean, we do a Disney podcast, and at least one of the two of us didn't even know it was in theaters for days until it had already been labeled a box office bomb, and all of the media outlets were reporting like Disney's latest animated feature bombed, and I was like, what do you mean Disney's latest animated feature? That hasn't even come out yet. And it's like, no, it's been out for like a week. So that's what took me by surprise. But when it came out on Disney Plus, it immediately became the most watched thing on Disney Plus.
Which does bring me to a point. If a film can find an audience that way, great. But this doesn't bode well for the animation movies, because if this keeps happening over and over again, what's stopping the company from saying, well, we're just not going to release these into theaters at all because most people are waiting for the Disney Plus release anyway, and just shove all of the animated movies on Disney Plus, which I wouldn't doubt that was Chapek's plan before he got outed.
It was, but will that be Iger's plan now that he's back in the short term, and will it be whoever succeeds him?
Mm-hmm.
Chapek, the reason why nobody was happy to see Chapek come in was that he had already shown when he was running the parks that he was very much a quick turn buck guy. And Disney has always been about memories and experiences. We talked about Disney trailers, a couple episodes ago, and how they set up that experience of, the Lion King trailer, and how the parks set up experiences and everything, and you're willing to pay exorbitantly especially in the past, people were willing to pay a little bit more because the experience of going to the park and the experience that the cast members provide and the experience of being in this kind of enclosed space where you just feel like you're in a completely different world is kind of worth that premium. You save up all year or sometimes years of your life to have that moment. And that's what Disney and most people who have run Disney in the past have understood. And Chapek never got that. He was a very much a get in, get out, thanks for the money kind of guy. And that's how he was treating the animation end. A Disney movie was not something you anticipated anymore. It was here, sit down, put this on to shut the kids up, and we'll have another one pumped out next month. And that's not what a Disney animated film has ever been for most of us who've grown up with the company. It's been an event. You know, ever since the Disney Renaissance, for sure, you have waited for the next Disney animated movie. It's been an anticipation. It's been a moment. And the problem with something like Strange World is it wasn't a moment. You didn't even know it had come out. And that's also the problem with Treasure Planet and Atlantis, is the marketing was so bad it wasn't a moment. It was something you discovered on VHS later, or it played over and over on Disney Channel and it became part of your childhood, and now they're very nostalgic for people like us, and we love them.
And yeah, I mean, now Treasure Planet is getting the respect. Now Atlantis is getting the respect. I mean, I just saw a video of the new fireworks show at Disneyland, and they finally put Treasure Planet and Atlantis characters in the projection for the fireworks show, and I never thought that would happen.
Oh, that's so good to see. I'm always for, and we talked about this when we talked about Atlantis. I'm always for Atlantis being put in more things. But I mean, now we're going to see if Strange World is going to become one of those. That's going to end up taking its place with that.
Are we going to have to wait 20 years until this movie gets the respect it whether it deserves the respect or not, or are we going to have to wait 20 years to find out? I mean, I didn't even see any merchandise for this movie. Did you?
I haven't seen anything yet on any of the typical Disney sites that I follow. I haven't heard anything about anything showing up in the parks yet from any cast members I know. But it doesn't mean it's not there. I just haven't heard anything about it yet. But I haven't. I mean, there's normally this, we're, recording this at the end of January, beginning of February here. And it came out Thanksgiving of last year. So by now there should be merchandise, and I haven't seen it be a thing. And I usually keep fairly close tabs on that. So I don't know. We're gonna see. There's definitely merchandising opportunities in it, because everything Disney does has merchandising opportunities.
They make a joke about it in the movie.
Yeah, there is a joke in the movie about how merchandisable some stuff is. But yeah, I'm going to say right now that since this movie is so new, if you haven't seen this movie, stop the podcast right now. Go watch the movie.
We're going to go full spoilers.
Yeah, we are going to go full spoilers on this. Usually, we just kind of figure, since we're talking about stuff people have seen, but this movie is still really new, and odds are a lot of people haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it, stop it right now. Go watch the movie. I do think it's worth at least one watch, and then come back to us after you've watched it. Because from now on, we're going to assume you've watched it, and we're going to go full spoilers. So final warning.
Full spoiler. Right. Yep. All right. Okay. So before we really dive into it, there's a lot of influence from this of like the old pulp comic books. Like even the title of the movie, Strange World, sounds like an old comic book title. And this
in fact, it was used as an old comic book title by at least two different comic book companies, one of which was a precursor to Marvel Comics.
So this is technically a Marvel movie. All right.
This is technically a Marvel movie if you trace it far back enough. Yeah.
I mean, to me, Marvel kind of, similar titles like Tales to Astonish and stuff like that, which sounds good, but also I think it's another thing that held this movie down is that the title doesn't tell you anything about the movie.
The original title of the film was supposed to be Searcher Clade. It was just supposed to be the name of one of the main characters. But they decided that since Searcher wasn't technically the main character, they would broaden the title a bit.
They could have called it The Adventures of the Clade Family.
Yeah, or something like that. One of the other things you'll notice is the way that the font at the beginning is the same font or an almost identical font to the Indiana Jones font.
I was going to make that which is also based off pulp comics of the 40s and the movie serials of the time. Even the original trailer was done in that style.
Yeah.
And we kind of get that in the beginning of the movie.
As you have that great 1940s serial voiceover, which is our old friend Alan Tudyk in one of 3 appearances. Yeah, he's got 3 characters in this film, and that's the first one you hear.
I mean, seeing that opening in 2D makes me think, man, Disney could have done this in 2D.
I'm really annoyed that they did not continue that style throughout the film. I think it might have been a little bit better to have the entire film done in that kind of, not maybe a permutation of that style.
Because even
if you did it 3D to kind of keep some kind of that pulp style.
Because you even have the same kind of shading that you would see in like 30s and 40s comics.
Yeah, there has to be a way to do that where it's some version of that isn't, that's a little bit, I don't want to say cleaner, but a little bit different than maybe what they're doing in the Spider-Verse movies. Because I mean, I think we've mentioned before in talking about Spider-Man stuff that that animation style that they're using, I respect it and I understand what it's doing, but it gives me migraines and nausea. I cannot watch those movies. I watched the first movie once in the theater and I barely made it through. And I didn't watch it in 3D. I watched a 2D screening. And the effect was so bad for me visually that I actually walked out and asked if we'd been accidentally put in a 3D screening without glasses, because I was having so much trouble. And I've talked to other people who had that effect. Apparently it's rare enough that it's not happening to a lot of people, but there are certain people with certain medical conditions that we're getting really sick watching those movies. So there has to be a way to kind of mimic that old style comic effect without having that that thing when you do the animation that way. And I kind of wish they'd have found a way to do that, because I really like it when they do it in the 2D style. I loved that opening animation, and I wish they'd have carried it throughout the movie. But the animation in this is beautiful. I'm not going to knock any bit of the animation in this movie. But I do wish, I love that opening part so much. I wish they had carried it through.
Yeah. Like, if they decided to do, like, the Clades Disney Plus TV show, do it in that style. If they decide to do that.
Yeah. But, that opening where they have the song, where they're introducing the characters, and the world they live in, And they've got that chorus, it's like,
Jaeger Clade.
he's a big manly man and here's his son and they go on adventures and, it's so perfect for the style, and Alan Tudyk really nails that 40s announcer voice. And I love that, everything about that, the way it opens from a comic book into the frame there. So good opening, solid opening. And it immediately establishes everything about the world that you need to know. From the point of view of the characters. Avalonia. And it's ringed by impassable mountains. And they keep sending adventurers out to find what's beyond the mountains. And Jaeger Clade is the bravest, most adventurous adventurer. I mean, that's the setup. It's very simple and very easy for a child to understand.
And immediately they go into the conflict between father and son with two different ideologies. So like this is already picking up the pace of similar movies of the nature, We have the father, we have Jaeger who just wants to explore. I'm going over these mountains. That's the goal. That's the mission. That's what we're here for. And you got Searcher is, hey, I found this plant that excretes energy. This could be our future. This could solve all of our problems. We don't need to go over the mountain when we could just have this plant and this is our future. This is going to solve all of our problems. And then you get
because the whole reason for going over the mountain is that they're trying to find a way to advance as a society. That does seem to be the thing. Is they're trying to. It seems that they live a very simple life, and their technology has advanced X amount. And they think that the way to progress is over the mountain. And
possibly
Searcher finds this plant.
Yeah.
And he says, this plant is the progress we're looking for. We don't need to go over the mountain. And Jaeger's like, nope, I have a task. I'm going to go over the mountain. That's it. And everybody else is like, no, we actually agree with your son. He seems to have found the solution. And Jaeger's like, yeah, nope, I don't care about you. I don't care about my son. I don't care about my wife, who we don't see, but
till the end of the movie. I don't even care
except in a picture.
Yeah, I don't care about my society. I care about this thing because this thing is going to be my legacy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have part of, as we've dubbed, the new Disney. This movie, one of the first things they're tackling is toxic masculinity. The I am a man, I must prove myself to be a man by climbing these mountains. And I don't care about anything else. Even though the solution is right here, I'm going to keep doing this because I am a man.
Yeah, and Jaeger is very much, we talk about the 40s style of the setup and the visuals, but Jaeger is very much the 40s man. In a 1940s movie, he would be the hero because he is everything that society would prize. He is strong and brave and self-sufficient, and he doesn't listen to anybody, and it's like he is all of the things. Whereas Searcher is the one who is into botany. He's the nerd,
Yeah.
He's the, let's face it, he stops and looks around at nature, and they say in his opening song that he has the head for botany, and it's he's the opposite. He's, his father is shown as large and muscular, and he's shown as skinny and shorter, and so it sets up that dynamic that in a typical 1940s adventure serial, you would immediately be like, well, Jaeger is the hero and Searcher is the weak little mousy, sidekick. But that's immediately thrown out the window when Jaeger goes like, well, you do whatever you want to do, everyone else on my team. I am going to walk away into certain icy death. Farewell. And then the movie subverts all that by just cutting to 25 years later, and nobody has seen Jaeger in 25 years.
And now Searcher is the man.
He's the father of Pando. He's the guy that gave everybody electricity. I mean,
he is literally everything Jaeger wanted to be in terms of fame, in terms of in terms of fame, in terms of the glory. And
he has a statue in the center of town right next to his father's. Everybody in town loves him and knows his name and gives him things. And,
he's literally, in this universe, he is literally the father of invention.
Yeah.
He, through Pando, they have electricity, they have power. Every little bit of their society is powered through this plant Pando. And I do like the sort of retro future kind of designs that all of the vehicles and some of the buildings in the town square have.
It's sort of like 1940s airplanes and Zeppelin kind of technology, but it's also, they have kind of anti-grav technology and retro future rocket ship designs, and yeah, it's really, really neat.
I mean, it's what the people in the 1940s thought we would look like in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Very, very Fallout almost.
Yeah, I did get a lot of that similar kind of idea. I've been doing a Fallout playthrough again, getting ready for the new TV show that they're filming, and it really did remind me of that because of the way the Pando glows with the green light is very similar to the way that all the fusion cores in Fallout have that green radioactive glow, so it is very similar to that. It's a very magical feeling, but also sci-fi feeling, kind of mixed together. The way that they treat the Pando is that it's a plant that can you can grow it, but it'll power everything. And you just pick it out of the ground and shove it into a glass case, and then shove it into your radio or your coffee maker or your airplane.
The ultimate green energy.
Yeah. And that is what it seems like at the start of the film, is that this is the ultimate green energy. This would be the solution for anyone's energy crisis. Just grow this plant and turn it into a battery. We get our second Alan Tudyk cameo right here at the top of the movie, where he is also one of the radio announcers when they talk about, wow, yay, Pando, isn't it so great? And they're explaining the plant to the audience.
And we get not one, but two things that, if this movie was more popular, would get the usual suspects up and angry.
You're going to have to restate that, because the usual suspects are already up and angry.
So, yeah, Searcher marries a black woman, has a mixed-race child, and the mixed-race child is gay.
Yeah, we have another. This is our first gay character in a Disney film.
Although this one is more allowed to be more gay. Because this is no longer sugarcoating it. This isn't, they don't say the word gay, but it's clearly using the same schoolboy crush tropes. Only it's not towards a girl; it's towards another boy.
And they're not subtle about it either. They actually do refer to this as a crush. Searcher calls his son Ethan, he compares Ethan's crush to Searcher's first crush on a girl. Fast forward to the end of the movie, and, Ethan and his crush Diazo are, cuddling at the end. There's never a kiss between them because they're kids. I'm not sure exactly how old Ethan is supposed to be in this, but he's a kid. Yeah, they call him a teenager, but it's never stated how old that is. So anywhere between 13 and 19. But he's definitely still young enough to be underage.
Living at home.
Yeah, so 13 and 17, somewhere in that age range. There's never anything between them other than a school-age crush and putting an arm around each other at the end of the movie. And I have seen this referred to as sexual content. I have seen people unironically refer to this as sexual content.
If that's sexual content to you, you have never had sex.
Yeah. I mean, the parents in this film are the only people that kiss.
And they do it just to annoy their son, as parents would do.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's not even like, passionate making out or anything.
It's very chaste kisses, but
yeah,
they do it often enough.
They're very chaste kisses, yeah, but
they're really doing it in a way. Oh, you're bothered that I'm showing affection to your mother. Mwah, 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 mwah.
Yeah, it's very much the joking way that parents would do that. Like, oh, are you embarrassed by your parents? But it's really sad if you live your life in a way that this is what keeps you up at night. I'm just gonna say that I really feel pity and true sadness for anyone who would get that upset over either the idea of a mixed race couple of any sort or the idea of just a queer person existing. Anyway, all of that aside, and if you have a problem with any of that, please shut our podcast off and never return. So we get this cute little scene where Ethan's friends come by because they have been camped out all night to get the new expansion for their favorite board game, Primal Outpost. And I absolutely love this.
Primal, the Gathering.
Yeah. Well, it's really more, it looks to me more like Settlers of Catan.
In that there's no fighting and it
seems to be like a cooperative building kind of trading board game. Like, yeah, there are creatures in it, but it seems to be more that kind of idea. Because he says multiple times that it's about like cooperating and building balance with nature and stuff like that.
Something that both Jaeger and Searcher do not understand.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a big plot point, and I kind of like the idea about this. And when you said, is there merch for this? I'm like, I really want to play this board game.
Yeah, they could totally put Primal Outpost out as a game.
I mean, they have put, you know, all kinds of Disney board games out. I mean, they've put, you can buy Sabacc in Galaxy's Edge now, and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So it wouldn't be the first time that they've taken a game you see played in a Disney property and put it in, you know, the parks. But the first moment I saw that in the movie, I was like, oh yeah, I want to buy this board game. I want to know how this is played. I want to, you know.
Yeah, we get bits and pieces throughout the movie, but yeah, I'm kind of wondering, because you don't put this kind of game in your movie. Somebody on the writing team has wrote out a full list of rules for this game. I guarantee you. Someone on that writing team, somewhere in the Disney archives, there is a full list of rules for this game. Every kind of character and monster and object in this game is written out completely.
Yeah. And you know, somebody is a gaming nerd, and they're like, they love board games like this, and you know, this is where we meet Ethan's crush, because Ethan's mad that he missed the big opening day because it's already sold out, and Ethan was on the farm having to pick Pando, and his crush was like, hey, you know, I got you an extra pack. Don't worry. I didn't forget about you.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's clear that this crush is mutual. It's just they're both young teenagers who are shy, and they don't really know how to express those feelings because, oh, yeah, we're just buddies. And no, it's not like that. But they both totally want it to be like that, and neither one wants to make the first move because it's so cute and cuddly, and they're just, yeah, it's a schoolyard crush that, you know, if one of them was a girl, no one would be complaining about this.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, is that even one of his friends immediately calls it out as flirting, because there's the girl that's in the group, and immediately, as soon as Ethan and Diazo start flirting, she's like, okay, I've only allotted like 3 to 5 minutes for you two to flirt, so can we please, you know, get this moving quickly so that we can talk about the game, you know, because I want to get to gaming, please. And I'm like, oh, okay, so we're not hiding the fact that they're flirting here. Like, this isn't going to be subtle thing. Like, we're just going to have a character say they are flirting.
And this is all with everything we've talked about. That's the first 10 minutes of this movie. So this movie is going fast, because it's like we need to get into the strange world as quickly as possible. Let's keep this going.
Yeah, and you know, we have Searcher walk up, and immediately he's like, oh, is this the boy you have a crush on? This boy right here is the boy you have a crush on.
Typical.
You two have a crush on each other. You're gonna be boyfriends. Like how you're both boys and you have a crush on each other, like a romantic thing. You're gonna be romantic with each other because you're boys. You got,
like he's just in full I'm you know, dad embarrassing their kid mode. Oh yeah,
and it's cute, but I kind of like that the movie doesn't dance around it. I mean, it's not like he just stands there with a big sign that goes like gay. But again, like you said, if this was a girl that had jumped out of the thing, he would have been like, oh, so this is the girl you got a crush on? Is she going to be your girlfriend? Or you want to invite her over for dinner?
Or if Ethan was Elizabeth.
We would not even be really talking about this.
If Ethan was Elizabeth.
Yeah.
You know.
Or if Diazo was, you know, Daisy or something. Like, it's the exact same scene as dozens of other kids' movies, and nobody has an issue with it.
I mean, Searcher going full, yeah, Did I tell you how cool my son is? He can do this, this, and this. He's a right cash, isn't he?
Yeah, and he talks up his son to his son's crush.
Searcher.
He tries to play wingman.
Yeah, he tries. Like, you're not a good wingman, my dude. He
tries to use the slang in a hello fellow kids kind of way. And it comes off as very cringe. And, Ethan makes a joke about, okay, we're going to go now. Sorry, my dad is being very dad about everything. All right, goodbye. We'll play later. And it's really cute and awkward, and everybody has had that situation happen to them. Like, if you have had parents or anybody who has been a parental figure in your life, you have had that situation.
Yeah.
There you go.
But this leads us to the worry that Searcher has. His worry is that his son is going to grow up to be like his father. Diazo trades him the Explorer card for the Farmer card. Searcher sees Ethan looking at his grandfather's statue, and he has this little fantasy moment where Ethan all of a sudden has his dad's mustache. Says, "I'm going to leave you just like your dad left you."
Yeah, Ethan even tries to make his dad feel better and say, like, I think Grandpa would be very proud of what you've accomplished with, bringing Pando to the world and all this kind of stuff. And Searcher says, yeah, you don't know the first thing about your grandfather then.
Well, tell me about him. And he finds it hard to talk about because, it's still a sore spot 25 years later, which, I don't blame the guy for, but clearly Ethan wants to know about his grandfather. And the fact that Searcher is hesitant to tell his son about his grandfather, you can tell that he's still hurt 25 years later of the fact that his father chose the adventure over his family.
Yeah. Because we see the moment of that decision, you don't actually blame Searcher at any point for this. You understand that Ethan wants to know, and you feel bad for Ethan, and you probably do think that, yeah, Searcher should probably just sit him down and say, look, here's what happened, and these are my feelings on it. I hope you understand. Because, let's be honest, it's always best to use your words.
Yep.
But you do understand Searcher's perspective. I mean, that has to be the worst feeling in the world. To be standing there at the moment that everyone in your society, I mean, literally the world as you know it, because we are told at the beginning of the movie, Avalonia that is all they know, and they've never seen anything outside of those mountains. So for him, this is the entire world. Everyone in the world praises him for the exact same moment as his father looked at him and went, yeah, I'm just going to choose to walk off into nothingness rather than be with you.
Searcher's greatest triumph is Yeager will see it as his greatest failure.
Yeah. And I mean, and at this point, it's been 25 years. I mean, you are at that point certain that man is dead. I mean, he turned around and he walked into snowy, icy oblivion.
We're even told that, Searcher's mother, Yeager's wife, moved on and married another man.
It's a really complicated and tragic bit where you can feel for everyone left behind. I mean, you feel bad for Penelope, the mom, because her son comes back with this great discovery, and he's like, by the way, Your husband just chose to walk away from everything.
Yeah.
And then you wait for him to come back, and you wait for him to come back, and he never comes back, and you're just like, well, guess he's dead. Guess I'll marry this other dude.
I will say this. I didn't notice this the first time I saw the movie, but I did notice on this second watch for this podcast, the dog only has 3 legs.
I did not notice that the first time either, and I felt so silly about it.
Like, you could even the usual suspects will even probably complain about that. Oh, we have a disabled dog. Now we got, blah blah blah.
Now the dog is woke. Yeah. But yeah, it's so bizarrely subtle. I missed it the first time as well. I don't know how. But yeah, Legend, the adorable dog.
I wonder, would Disney release a doll of a 3-legged dog and have people understand he's coming from this movie? And not have parents complain, oh, why is this dog broke? Why is this dog broken? No, this is just the way the dog looks in the movie.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But I absolutely adore Legend. He's so cute. Because I like that the first time you see him, the dad is making avocado toast. Probably another thing that somebody's going to complain about. And Ethan sits down to eat it, and the dog just jumps up at the table, and in between, it cutting to Ethan and him going like, oh, I don't want to go out and weed the field, and it cuts to Searcher, and he's like, no, you need to go weed the field, and it cuts back, and if you're watching carefully, you notice that Legend has like reached down and grabbed a piece of avocado toast and eaten it in between the 2 cuts.
Now the dog is super woke.
Yeah, it's like that dog could have afforded a house by now if he hadn't eaten that avocado toast. But I just love him. Like, that's such a cute little dog thing to have done, and they just have him like licking his lips just off to the side. I'm like, I just love that the dog is stealing food off the plate and no one's yelling at him for it. Because they're too busy fighting about who's going to weed the field.
Yeah.
There's one point where one of the vehicles is crashing and everybody is screaming, and the dog has just shoved his face through a broken window and is just doing that dog thing where he's like going down the road like with his tongue hanging out like, this is the greatest day of my life. I forget exactly which scene, because there's like different scenes where different vehicles crash where the dog's in them, but like there's just one scene where there's just like a group of them, flying through, and all the humans are screaming, and the dog is like, this is the best! I love the wind! It's like, and I noticed it on the replay, and I was like, because I was focused on the humans the first time through. If you look at the dog, as during some of those crash scenes, the dog is just having the best time.
like Legend and Splat, who we'll talk about in a minute, like, I can see those two having like shorts on Disney Plus in the next few years. Just those two having little misadventures.
Yeah. Just mentioning the way they animated Splat is the animators said that they used the since Splat doesn't speak but has to communicate, that they used a lot of similar animation tricks to the way they did the flying carpet in Aladdin in order to make sure that it had a nonverbal method of communication in the way that it moved its body and its limbs, for lack of a better word, and was able to gesture its way through communication. And it's a very expressive design, and there is never a point where you're confused about what that particular creature is attempting to get across. And I find that such a feat of animation. So bravo to the entire animation team and, all the concept artists and everybody involved in that design, because wow, did that work incredibly well. So
yeah,
bravo to them.
So now we get to the main plot of this. Pando is dying, and they need Searcher to go into the center of the earth to find out what's wrong. And we get our leader for this mission, Callisto, who was not only a member of that original expedition team 25 years ago, but is now the president of Avalonia.
Yeah. And it's Lucy Liu!
Yeah, it's a woman president, and it's a woman Asian president.
Yeah. But it's Lucy Liu, so who cares?
Lucy Liu is awesome.
Yeah, Lucy Liu kicks ass. They say that the reason they have to go dig down is because Pando is one large organism. That while you can plant it on the surface, the roots go down and interconnect with all the other Pando plants. And so Pando is one large organism. So even though the whatever it is that is affecting Pando in one part of Avalonia, it will spread via the root system to all the other Pando plants. So if they can't figure out what is causing it, it will eventually kill the entire crop of Pando, and they will lose their source of power. Interestingly enough, if you are already into weird biology of Earth, you may recognize the name Pando, because this is actually based on a living thing. Pando is the name of the biggest tree that we have found. It's also one of the oldest living organisms that we have found on Earth. And it is a aspen grove in Utah, I believe, that is actually a single tree. It looks on the surface like thousands of trees, but it has, at least they assume that it has an interconnected root system underneath, and genetically they figured out that all of these thousands of trees are actually the same tree. And they've named it Pando. Yeah, I mean, it's like, and when I say thousands of trees, I mean like tens of thousands of trees.
Like a whole forest.
Yeah, it's like an entire forest, but it's genetically a single tree. It's like over 100-acre forest. But it's really cool, and that's where they got the name. So they named it after a thing in the real world, in the US even. But I liked that because I was like, oh, okay, I've heard of that before. That's neat that they're doing that. When they go down, okay, that's when they get to the place that we've seen in all the trailers. It's this magical looking strange world because they fall through the crust of the earth and there's something underneath it. And this is where I'm going to ask you, Tuesday, a very important question.
Mm-hmm.
How far into the movie did you figure out the big twist?
When they said it in the movie, when you
physically see the evidence along with the characters?
The eye. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tell you when my household realized this, because on rewatch I was like, I wonder where exactly in the timestamp this is in the movie when we figured it out in my house. Now, I will admit that that my household is comprised of people who have master's degrees in, literature and media analysis. Okay. 22 minutes into the movie.
I had a feeling when they kept on referring to it as the heart, because you see the Pando growing on what they call the heart of Avalonia.
Well, she keeps saying the heart of Pando. We need to find the heart of Pando. But yeah, we had not even 22 minutes into the film is not even when they reveal the twist that Jaeger Clade is still alive. But, the big twist of the film is that Avalonia resides on the back of a giant turtle. And the strange world is they've broken through the shell of the turtle and they're now inside the turtle. Because there is something about when Searcher falls onto the squishy ground and looks up and sees that group of red things floating through the air. And I went, is that a bloodstream? And then they're attacked by two things that I went, oh, so those are like white blood cells? I mean, honestly, it's kind of like if you know just kind of basic biology. Also, Jaeger Clade is played by Dennis Quaid, who was the star of Inner Space.
I did not make that connection till right now.
So they're kind of double dipping at the well they're kind of double dipping at the well of reusing a guy who's already made a movie about going inside of a body and clearing out an infection. Spoilers for Inner Space. I don't know if that's a Warner Brothers movie. We don't care.
Let's I mean, before we get too much into this, you want to talk about the third Alan Tudyk cameo in this movie?
Yeah, we have to, because this is the only part of the movie that I am mad as hell about. Disney, this isn't funny, and this is not a nice thing to put in your cutesy little kids movie.
I mean, they own it now.
I don't care if they own it. It will always be too soon for this. So, Alan Tudyk's third character in this movie is the original pilot of the little spaceship they take to go down into the giant hole they've dug into the Earth's crust, i.e. the shell of the turtle. At which point they are attacked by these giant red pterodactyl-looking things, which turn out to be part of the immune system. And one of them comes crashing through the front window of the spaceship, much like a giant wooden lance, you'd say, and grabs Alan Tudyk's character by the chest and pulls him out of the spaceship.
I am a leaf on the wind. Watch out. Oh!
It's too soon, Disney. It will always be too soon for that reference. And yes, it was an intentional reference. They have admitted it was an intentional reference to Firefly and to Wash and to Wash's death in Serenity. Too soon. That is not fodder for your cute little Disney movie. But anyway, that was there, honestly. I think the other thing that makes me so mad about it is that this is a kids movie, and that's kind of there are like 2 deaths of a human in this movie. One is a member of Jaeger's expedition crew. Well, we don't really see him die.
It's a fake out death.
It's a fake out death. but they did name the character Lonnie Redshirt as a joke for the Star Trek fans. So they do a joke where like the character, you think he's dead for a second, and then he pops out and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I guess I shouldn't have been standing there," or something. But the only character I feel like actually really die is that Alan Tudyk character. And narratively, he dies because we need the mom who has shown up on her crop duster following the spaceship to be like, hey, Ethan snuck on board the spaceship because he wants to go on an adventure and be an explorer. I need him and the dog to come back home. And as they're standing there arguing with the son about get on the crop duster and go back, these little pterodactyl creatures attack the ship and kill the pilot, and the mom makes a daring do, thing and jumps from her crop duster plane onto the kind of spaceship thing, the Venture, they call it.
Because she's the only other pilot in this movie.
She's the only other pilot, yeah. And she's a very good one. We see that early in the movie where she's kind of hot dogging around in her crop duster. But her crop duster is destroyed and the Venture crashes and they're stuck underground, quote unquote, they're stuck inside the turtle. So that's kind of why that Alan Tudyk pilot character dies narratively, is in order to make sure that the mom is trapped with them so that the whole Clade family is together. And that's fine, but also this is the only death in the movie and no one comments on it.
And
the movie does not even pause to be like, Duffel is dead.
Do we even hear his name being called Duffel?
We do.
Okay, because I don't remember.
They do give him a name, and they do refer to him by name as they're introducing the characters around. The captain refers to him. Also, by the way, the captain's last name in this film, Lucy Liu's last character, she is Captain Mal. I am not joking about that. Her name is Callisto Mal. So Alan Tudyk has twice died piloting a ship captained by Captain Mal.
President Tight Pants.
Yeah. I'm a little annoyed because New Disney has kind of been a little bit better about being more I don't want to say sensitive, but I kind of do, about death in that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you can't show death as part of children's media. I think it's important to show death as part of children's media. But I think it's also important to show grief as part of children's media.
At least the deaths that we've seen in this New Disney era, at least they had meaning. Like we just talked about Frozen a few weeks ago. Yeah, and the rest of the movie is the fallout of the King and Queen's death and how it impacted Anna and Elsa's life.
Yeah. And these people, I understand that they're in a traumatic and life or death situation. They are there to save their society. And they are on a ticking clock and a time schedule and stuff. But there is never a point in this movie where they're just like, we just watched a dude get killed right in front of us. And that is arguably a thing probably none of us have ever had happen to us before. And one of these is a child. Like, can none of us take a moment just to be like, and a moment of silence for Pilot Duffel, who just bit it horribly, like, at all. Just 2 seconds of this movie? Can we not even just
no one mentioned it ever.
That?
No one ever mentions this. No one seems to care. They just move on like he wasn't even a part of the crew.
Yeah, never mentioned again. Never. It's almost played as a joke. I mean, it's not really like, it's not like a funny haha moment, but it's really there. It's like, oh, how do we make sure the mom is on board the ship? Well, let's kill this guy. You know, it's like,
we'll create a character just to die because we need to find a way to get the mom on the plane, rather than say, hey, we need a pilot. Oh, I'm a pilot.
It's almost like somebody was like, oh, hey, isn't Alan Tudyk in all these movies now? I want to write a Firefly joke.
Yeah.
Firefly joke achieved.
It's possible that they had Alan Tudyk already in to just be the narration and just be the radio announcer. Hey, Alan, I have this idea. Let's do a Firefly joke in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of just goes at this point. And we've made jokes about it before, like, and Alan Tudyk is also in this movie because Alan Tudyk is in every one of these movies now.
But it also feeds into the Alan Tudyk dies trope.
Yeah.
I mean, now granted, his character hasn't died since King Candy back in Wreck-It Ralph, I think. But yeah.
I don't know. There's something about this that irks me on several levels. And I wish they had not done it.
I mean, you were one of the when Alan Tudyk dies was a meme. You were one of the people that I know. You were the one pushing for stop killing Alan Tudyk.
Well, yeah. I mean, also because just, you know, what a waste. More Alan Tudyk is always better. Killing Alan Tudyk is a waste. Keep Alan Tudyk through to the after credits scene. And then do 2 after credits scenes, both with Alan Tudyk.
Yeah.
And a viral marketing campaign afterwards with Alan Tudyk. Just, I don't know. Just more Alan Tudyk. But anyway.
Yeah. We mentioned it. Jaeger Clade is alive and has been living for the last 25 years in this strange world.
What is he eating?
He's eating the creatures. He's eating the creatures of the land, which, again, we find out are the immune system of the turtle.
Well, and all the other stuff, too. I mean, some of it's the blood cells and the lungs and the heart and the...
Muscles, probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably just eating bits of muscle. It's like... I mean, turtle is tasty. I'm not saying it's not. So... he's just eating the turtle from the inside.
Yeah, but that does, I mean, it now makes it a 3-way generation gap because you have Jaeger to Searcher, Searcher to Ethan of how they live their lives. Searcher's fears are even more amplified as Ethan and Jaeger start bonding.
Yeah. And of course, you get that moment where, you know, we have already said the thing about the mom, but you get that moment where Jaeger finds out what happened to the mom, and Searcher is mad at him. He's like, everybody thought you were dead. It has been 25 years. Do you even realize it has been 25 years? Mom is gone. And he's like, your mother died? And she's like, no, she's moved on. She's remarried. She's like,
she moved out of the house
every day. You know, like, yeah.
I mean, he could have phrased it better, but it's a nice, I mean, it was, he said that intentionally to get that reaction out of Jaeger.
Well, and also it plays on the Disney trope. Our idea is that, of course, his mom's going to be dead. This is a Disney movie. So it plays with the audience expectation too, you know? Which I liked. I mean, I laughed so hard the first time I heard that line, you know, mom's gone. And I was like, oh, yeah, another Disney dead mom. And he's like, your mom's dead? No, she's like, she works out every day. It's like, she's just remarried, We thought you were dead, And I think it really, again, skipping around a bit, I think it really hits that idea of we all thought you were dead, and do you realize how long it's been, doesn't really hit Yeager until he sees the compass that he gave Searcher at the beginning of the movie to help him find his way home. And Searcher kind of does the same thing again towards the end of the movie back to Yeager. And Yeager notices that Searcher has since torn out Yeager's image from the family photo that Yeager always kept in there. That's how damaging Yeager's choice was to Searcher. So much so that he refused to even keep images around.
And, again, for Searcher, every time he goes into town to sell his wares, to refill those Pando machines, he has to look at this big statue of his father, the man that left him. Yeah. And he has a statue in the town square of everyone saying how great he is. Granted, he also has a statue of himself, but it's well, they have a statue of me because I discovered Pando. I am the father of every device we have in our society. And then there's this guy.
Yeah, and it is kind of interesting because you wonder what was Yeager's contribution before that earned him a statue.
That he was just, all we know that he was just the adventurer. That's all we know.
I mean, he was an explorer, but did he find something or do something to also earn him a statue? Like,
Avalonia doesn't look to be that big of a society, so it's not like it's a country that he gets pioneered through. It's at most a large city with farmland around it. That's about, I don't know. I do not know. I don't even think this movie knows.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't seem to be that he's important, famous, but
he's famous because the plot needs him to be famous.
Yeah.
Because everyone says, "Oh, you're the grandson of the great explorer, Yeager Clade," and even the kids, even Ethan's friends know, yeah, your grandpa was a famous explorer.
Well, yeah, but it's like everybody goes to the same town square and there's a giant statue of him in there. There's a statue of two guys. So, the thing is, though, is that once they get down there, it is fascinating how little Yeager has learned about the environment.
Because he didn't want to. His whole thing was, I'm going to the mountain. I don't care about this area that I'm in, no matter how beautiful or wonderful it might look. My goal is the mountain. And I'm going to go under the mountain. If I can't go over the mountain, I'll go under it.
It is a funny sequence when he was like, well, I decided to go under the mountain because I realized that going over the mountain was kind of certain death. And I found a cave and I decided I would try to explore the cave and see if there was a way under the mountain or through the mountain. And then the ground gave way and I ended up here. And Searcher immediately goes, so you're trapped. And he's like, well, I wouldn't say that. And he's like, yeah, you are. Even accidentally, you would think he would pick up on some things. And it's amazing how closed off he is. Because it is so almost immediately apparent. Or at least it was to me, but I kind of told you, 22 minutes in, that, he's going around and he says, yeah, these things follow me around everywhere. And I burn down a path and then these things come along and regrow the path after me. And I was like, yeah, because it's like scar tissue, Like, obviously, they're just healing. I mean, not everything is a one-to-one correlation with a human anatomy or even animal anatomy, because it is a bit speculative anatomy in the way a lot of it works. But a lot of it is so similar to actual functional anatomy. Like, there are two colors of bloodstream. I don't know if you notice that. One is red and one is blue. So there's oxygenated blood and non-oxygenated blood. At one point that you can see, normally we only see the red, but at one point in the wide shot, you can see that there's also a blue quote unquote highway that's going along with cells at one point in the back. You can tell, so they set up, and that, ends up being important later, in the climax of the movie. These cute little creatures that come along and regrow things, But it's obviously in a same way to the way, scabs and scar tissue work in our bodies and everything. And I'm like, you've been down there for 25 years and you haven't picked up on this?
But he's also, that's not really something that he's ever been interested in. His whole thing is conquering the frontier, and it's not, the nerd stuff was Searcher's thing, and he always found that uninteresting.
I don't know. It's just, to me, there's a difference between nerd stuff and if I put my hand in the fire, it burns me. If I put my hand in the fire, it burns me. Like, eventually, don't you learn that I don't put my hand in the fire, I don't get burned? Like, some things you don't necessarily have to be interested in the scientific mechanism of why the fire burns your hand to just be like, well, I do A, I get B. Like, don't you just start to put some things together after a while?
I mean, again, it just that seemed to be Yeager's character, is that just not interested in stuff like that.
This is a guy that would put a fork in a light socket 18 times.
And,
it's like...
I mean, it also plays up later when the three of them are playing the game, where it's, as we mentioned, the game is not about good guys and bad guys. It's about coming together and with your environment. All of the, the land and the creatures coming together and coexisting, which is a foreign concept for Yeager. And obviously a foreign concept to Searcher. As they, Searcher and Yeager both agree, what kind of game doesn't have a bad guy to fight?
Yeah, I loved that scene because him trying to explain the game to him, and while it is, thematically appropriate for the movie, it did remind me of when I used to go play Dungeons and Dragons with friends when I was younger, and I would go out, and every single time I would come back and my father would say, "Well, did you win the game?" And I would have to say, like, it's not that kind of game. Well, what's the point of it? And I would just go like, okay, never mind, you're never gonna get this.
Yeah.
So,
and you could also kind of see it as Disney having a comment on their own current writing style. Like, there's no bad guy, that's just poor storytelling.
Yeah, and I did love the meta aspect of that, which also got a big laugh out of me. This is by the same writer as Raya and the Last Dragon, for anybody who didn't know. Another movie with similar themes and similar no central villain kind of idea. I really enjoyed that that the two older characters were very much, you know, even though they were in different ways, they still wanted to find a problem and squash it in some way. You know, it's that there's a problem and we have to fix it. And to Jaeger, the problem is there is a monster and I will squash it with my brute force. And to Searcher, the problem is I have something that needs protecting and an outside force is trying to take it, you know? Which is the pest control kind of thing. You know, I have my crops and weeds or pests are going to attack it.
It's how he treats the creatures attacking the Pando later on.
Yeah.
You know, that's just his mentality. We have to protect the Pando, so we're going to take care of all these creatures attacking the Pando.
And, you know, Jaeger is he's very, you know, old world colonial in that sense. I will go to a new place, I will conquer it, I will make it mine.
Jaeger is very proactive, Searcher is very reactive.
Yeah, Searcher is very I will stay home, I will protect my family, my children, my homestead. Ethan is very much holistic in the sense of we need to look at this from a larger perspective. We need to understand this from every single viewpoint and then make a decision.
And that's the beauty of, you know, that is the entire purpose of the game in this movie, to explain to the audience Ethan's perspective on life. Like, he feels that it's wrong that they're attacking these creatures, even though they are attacking the Pando. For Ethan, you know, he's the first one that figures it out that, you know, something ain't jiving right here. Something's wrong here, and there's got to be a way for all of us to coexist together. And he's kind of brushed aside by Jaeger and Searcher for that.
Yeah, and we see it from almost his first line in the film when his father, you know, when Searcher tells him, you didn't weed the field like I asked you, and Ethan says, well, what is a weed other than a plant growing where you don't want it to? Which I thought was such a great, you know, and immediately, you know, a lot of people will be like, oh, there's that smart teenager talking back to his dad because he doesn't want to do any work. But that's not what it is. He's actually stating his philosophy. Why do I have to remove the weed? It's a plant just like Pando is a plant. You just don't like where it's growing. Why is that? Tell me why that plant doesn't have a right to grow where it's currently growing. Why does Pando have more right to that land than the plant that's currently growing there? Justify that to me, and then I'll weed the yard. Which I think is a very interesting philosophy. And, you know, and you can take issue with the philosophy if you want. And if you've got a good justification for it, okay. But he's not doing it to get around the work. We see throughout the film that he's actually a very hard worker. And he's very highly motivated. He's just not a person who does things without thinking through the why. He will not follow you just because you tell him what to do. He wants you to justify why you're doing it, which I think is a rather solid footing that maybe more people need to have.
It also plays into him rebelling against his father because his father wants him to be, you know, join the family business of being a farmer. And
and his grandfather wants him to join the family business of being an explorer.
Yeah. And it's just,
I mean, both of them actually want the same thing, just in two different ways.
And it's with Ethan, he wants neither, but also wants both. But it's just he wants it on his terms versus his father and grandfather's terms.
I want to explore things and also nurture them.
Yes.
I do not want to explore for exploration and conquering sake. But I also do not want to stay in one place and make it into what I want it to be. There have been multiple ideas of agriculture throughout human history. And Searcher is very much the kind of European idea of agriculture, in that you mold and shape land and plant to what you want it to be. And, you redirect a river to irrigate a field instead of moving the field closer to the river, or you merge these type of plants together to make the yield what you want it to be, or you reshape the land to be more conducive to growing this type of plant.
Trying to bend nature to your will versus bending to nature's will.
Yeah. Whereas, you plant fields close to your house, so it's easier for you to do the labor and whatever. Whereas, say, like a lot of native tribes in the Americas would just create paths to where food crops were already growing and tend them there, because they figured, well, that was just where they are naturally better to grow. And so they would travel farther because they considered it was better for the plant. So instead of, bringing the plant closer to their house and trying to reshape the land there, they would just walk a little farther and go to where the plant was growing. So it's a different philosophy of agriculture. And I'm not necessarily saying that, they both have their ups and downs. But I don't know enough about agriculture to say, like, well, this is definitely better. But we do see both philosophies in play, because we see Searcher doing one sort of thing in one part of the movie, and we see Ethan doing one sort of thing in a different part of the movie. And they both are doing relatively well at the end of the movie, doing that kind of thing. So we do see that you do have to take various perspectives into account and try to find a way to get them to work together. And we do see that some perspectives are so toxic that they do have to change entirely.
Yeager learns that. Yeager finally decides to just settle down. He's not going on the expedition at the end of the movie. He's staying with Searcher to reconnect with him and even learn how to farm. Because, he knows all of those years he wasted just going after this impossible dream.
Well, the thing is that there is one part of the movie that I think is the single best line in the film, which is just before, we have that moment where they've kind of discovered what's going on, and they come back to tell the ship, and they say, hey, we can't destroy the creatures. We have to destroy the Pando. Because the Pando is actually an infection that is killing the world we live on. I mean, yeah, big surprise. This is actually a climate change thing too. I mean, it's not subtle, and it doesn't have to be. A lot of people who actually talk about the story of this movie dinged it for like, oh, it's not very subtle. But you know what? It's a kid's film. It doesn't have to be subtle.
I mean, and at this point, some people do need to be hit in the face with the clue by 4.
Yeah, but also, again, it's a children's movie. Sometimes children need you to look at them and be like, hey, kids, let's protect the earth and also clean up your room sometime. It's like, I don't know. It's
and the fact and the realization from Searcher that his life's work, his legacy, has been slowly killing this world. So he has to make the choice. And he chooses his son. He says, I'm doing this for my son. I'm ruining my legacy. I'm throwing it all away for my son. Because he means more to me than anything.
Well, also, what is his legacy if the entire society is not alive to praise you?
I mean, would Yeager do it? Would Yeager at the beginning of the movie, if that was his choice, he made that choice. His choice is, I'm going to go and cement my legacy over my family. And Searcher makes the choice, I'm going to save my family over my legacy.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, of course, that's the correct choice because you have no legacy if there's no one there to memorialize you. You have no legacy if there's no people. And what happens if Pando kills the turtle is, well, there's no society. You will kill all of the... I mean, this is a climate change metaphor. If you kill humanity, you have no legacy because there are no people to remember you. Duh. I love the bit where they accidentally end up back outside the turtle and they see the eye and they realize it's an eye.
And everything clicks in place.
And Searcher's first thing is, it's judging me.
I mean, he's probably gotten that look from his father several times over, so he knows. But it's like...
Well, I love that you basically see, metaphorically the eye of God, and Searcher's first thing is, it's judging me.
Well, I mean, after everything else, he's literally killing God unintentionally.
Well, I mean, they don't realize that yet. They have that moment 20 seconds later, but I just love that your first thing is you see a giant eye and you're like, it's judging me.
But I love that right before that, Searcher gets the realization, all his life he tried to be, I'm not going to be like my father. And in a way, he's just like his father in that he tries to force his son into his way of thinking, much like Yeager tried to force Searcher into his way of thinking.
Well, yeah, because Ethan throws the same words back at him, which is, I don't want to be like you. Searcher makes the correct choice, which is that he said, I never wanted you to think that I wasn't proud of you unless you became a farmer. I will always be proud of you. What he was really worried about, and I do think that's true. I never believed that was a lie. He was always going to be proud of his son. What his real fear was that if his son became an explorer, his son would be lost. Because he thought his dad was dead. He thought his son would die. he was afraid of losing his son in a mortal sense. That's was his big fear. All his son got the wrong communication, which was that I will only be proud of you if you stay here and become a farmer exactly like me, which was not his intent.
Yeah, but it was definitely Jaeger's, though.
Well, Jaeger's intent was, I will only be proud of you if you do exactly as I do in my exact way. And that comes to the greatest line in the movie, which is when he comes back and he delivers, when Searcher comes back and he delivers the news, we have to get rid of the Pando because we are actually living on the shell of a giant turtle and it is killing everyone and everything. And, whatever. Jaeger is mad because his son has now accomplished the thing he has spent his life trying to do. And Jaeger says, no, I'm not doing this. I am going to finish my life's mission, which is to, get to the other side and see what's there. I don't believe you that it's a turtle. You're just making this up. You're trying to beat your old man at his own game. And Jaeger says, what do you want me to say? That I was a bad father? And Searcher says, yes, but you didn't have to be.
Kudos to Jake Gyllenhaal on the voice acting. He's not really known as a voice actor, but he kind of nailed that line.
Yeah, the delivery of that line was very good, and the point, though, I mean, that is the emotional resonance of the movie in that one line. And, I've heard repeated over and over in my life, every parent, no matter what they do, ends up messing up their child. And I've heard that repeated often in my life. And it's never quite rung true to me. I don't think that's true. But even if it is, and I think it's true that every parent will make mistakes. I think that's true. I think that the heart of this film is accurate in what Searcher says is you don't have to be. As long as you're still breathing, you can choose to be a better parent at any stage.
And that's probably another thing that people will rag on this movie for being woke about, because we've seen a lot of millennial and Gen Z people disconnect and distance themselves from their parents because their parents refuse to change from their set in ways that caused the problems between the two in the first place. And this movie is saying you don't have to be that way. You can change, you can become better. And this is just going to be more fuel for people like, oh, this is, telling kids to disrespect their parents and not listening to them, and that they're right, that their parents are terrible.
Maybe. And I don't know. If that is what the movie is saying, then I support that. Because it's true. What Jaeger did was absolutely indefensible. And the thing is that it's fine to have that dream, but here's the thing is, how did he finally achieve that dream with the thing his son found? If he had turned around and come back with his son, he could have come back, and in 5 or 10 years, they could have built an airship or something, and they could have probably found a way, a digger through the mountain or something under the, there would have been, with Jaeger's tenacity and the inventions that Pando brought, they would have figured this out faster if Jaeger had turned around and come back. He didn't. He walked away and estranged himself from his family, and he didn't get anywhere. He was trapped down there because he couldn't get past the stomach. That's what he said. Like, I kept walking until I found the, sea of death or whatever, and it turned out to be the stomach. He couldn't get past the stomach because stomach acid. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until they ended up down there with the venture and, the venture and the help from Splat and all the other immune system creatures and all that other kind of stuff, blah, 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 events of the movie, that they were able to travel past that and make it to the other side. That's it. That's how he finally achieved his dream.
That big hero moment where he comes back and he says, "My legacy is you." He finally got it in the end. That he could have gone and get those mountains right with the compass and the bike, but it would have been a hollow victory, because he would have done the same thing he did 25 years ago, abandon his family.
Yeah, and now, even though he's back, at the end of the movie, once they make the right decision and they decide to destroy the Pando, help the immune system fight off the Pando, it stops the creature's heart for just a second, but the healing thing we talked about earlier, of course, it brings restarts the heart.
I don't think a viral infection goes away that fast, but Disney movie.
Well, it also seems to be a bit of a magical creature, which goes along with most of the myths of the world turtle. Mm-hmm. Let's just be honest. But when they're able to bring the heart back to life, and yay, the world turtle's saved, and but when we see the kind of 1 year later bit, Jaeger's there, and we see that their relationship has improved, but Jaeger is still suffering from it's not like he shows up and gets his wife back. She's still married to that other guy.
Yeah. But
and he's there with his son, and he's learning to farm, and okay, but it still looks a little strained,
We get a happy ending, but there's still work to be done.
Yeah. And, Avalonia has had to make a lot of changes. I mean, the Pando is gone and they're still in cleanup mode. We do see that most of the Clade farm still has dead Pando in the fields, but there's little things like strawberries and stuff that they're growing now, and tomatoes, and whatever, eggplants, and now we see various things in the field that they're growing now, but most of the land is still surrounded by dead Pando that hasn't been cleared away.
And even in the end, with Ethan and his friends, they're still cleaning up the strands of dead Pando roots from inside the turtle.
Yeah, they've gone down there to help the immune system actually clean up from inside. Yeah. And they have moved the entire surface society into wind turbine energy to try to make it more sustainable, which is interesting, the way that they're setting that up.
something windmills, and there's another thing to complain about. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but it's an interesting kind of meditation ending on being in sync with the environment once you've discovered, oops, we're actually harming our environment.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really, really fascinating.
There is room for more stories in this world. I just don't know if they're going to get an opportunity to tell them, especially since the movie did not perform so well at the box office, even though it is doing well on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I hope more people end up finding this movie. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. It's not the most groundbreaking Disney film. I will say that. I'm not going to be like, "Oh man, this movie absolutely changed my life." I have seen most of these concepts before. I have seen a lot of them done better elsewhere. However, if this is your first, like if this is baby's first introduction to a lot of these concepts, this is a really good baby's first introduction to most of these concepts, which I think it was intended to be.
I mean, when we were kids, we had Captain Planet. We don't got that anymore, so sure. Definitely this.
I think this is much better done than Captain Planet. And I mean, you know, I grew up with, well, I wasn't allowed to watch Captain Planet, but, you know, I grew up hearing about Captain Planet, and I watched it when I got older to see what the fuss was about. But I think that this is better done than that. I would recommend this over that if you have access to both.
For all the exploring that they try to do, the world isn't really, I mean, it's a very large planet that's mostly water, and the only source of land is the turtle. Yeah.
Well, at least that we see.
There
might be another turtle there.
Or another animal.
On the other side, or some other animal, or some, you know.
Again, so there's room for more stories to be told. Definitely. But
yeah.
let's
if this is also your baby's first introduction to the idea of the world turtle, okay, good. You know, it might lead you to other stories about world turtle. I've liked some of the other stories centered around world turtles better.
I mean, but I know you're a huge Discworld fan.
Yeah, I mean, famously so. It literally have a master's degree in Discworld. But yeah, I mean, you know, that's far from the only story out there about that. I mean, you know, the writer of this is of Asian descent and likes, you know, setting his worlds in stuff based in Asian mythology. So of course this takes from Asian mythology, but of course there's Native American tribes that have world turtle and Turtle Island things as well, and of course multiple Asian mythologies and other societies that have some form of world turtle or cosmic turtle or Turtle Island, or, you know, variations on that. So, you know, this is an idea that comes from a lot of different places that they just kind of made into some vague kind of other planet that probably not Earth, you know?
I mean,
but
would you say that this world runs on turtle power? I had to make the joke.
Heroes on the half shell.
Living on the half shell. Oh, she's going to kill me the next time we see. The next time she sees me, I'm dead. Oh, so Kiki, before you send me to the grave, I have to ask. Let's ask the question: does Strange World have the magic?
I mean, I think it does. It's cute for what it is. It's not at the top of my run out and see it list, but it deserves way better than it got. If you haven't seen it yet and for some reason still listened even when I told you to go watch it, go watch it.
I would agree. I think it definitely has the magic. It definitely deserves a chance. And people have already made the comparison. We've talked about it at the beginning of the podcast. I think that this is going to be one of those movies like Atlantis, like Treasure Planet, that is probably going to get looked over and will probably find its footing as a cult classic in the years to come.
Yeah, I really hope it finds an audience faster than that. I hope word of mouth spreads on this. I hope it gets some kind of follow-up somehow. And I really hope they make that board game.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are our thoughts on Strange World. Next week, Kiki, we got a new Marvel movie coming out. So it's time to get back into the MCU in honor of the new movie Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We are going back to the original Ant-Man movie, a movie that has a very interesting story behind it and might play into the upcoming sequel if rumors are to be believed. But we'll get there when we get there.
Yep.
So come back next week as we talk about Ant-Man, and we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here.
Join our conversation online on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic.
Twitter at Rewatch the Magic.
And of course, new episodes every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com.
Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.
If you want to help the fight for human rights in the U.S., the American Civil Liberties Union works to protect constitutional rights for all Americans. Their website is aclu.org. If you need reproductive services in the U.S. or wish to donate to those who do, go to abortionfunds.org for more info. The battle isn't over until the last person surrenders. The fight continues.